Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And it's good to see you and Ranking Member Shaheen and the rest of my distinguished colleagues. It's an honor to be here today to introduce my friend and fellow Arkansan, Governor Mike Huckabee, President Trump's nominee for U.S. Ambassador to Israel. I know Senator Cotton would have liked to be here too. In fact, it was the first call I received very early this morning, reminding me to tell everybody how much he supported this and what a great ambassador he thinks that Governor Huckabee would make. I would also like to say hi to Governor Huckabee's family and friends here in attendance and how glad we are that they are supporting him. We all know these are family affairs, whether it's us or people that serve in other aspects of government. This is a pivotal moment in our history, not just for our country, but for Israel and the special relationship between our nations. I've had the privilege of knowing the governor for many years, and I can say without hesitation, he's the right person to be our representative to Israel at this critical moment. And I'm thankful to President Trump for selecting such a staunch and passionate advocate for the Jewish state. Mike was raised in Hope, Arkansas, and went on to graduate from Ouachita Baptist University, where he majored in religion. He then attended Southwest Baptist Theological Seminary in Fort Worth in preparation for a lifetime of ministry, and included pastoring Emmanuel Baptist Church in Pine Bluff, Arkansas, and later at Beach Street Baptist Church in Texarkana, Arkansas. He went on to serve as president of the Arkansas Baptist State Convention, where his leadership and communication skills intersected at the cornerstone of his life, spreading the gospel and shepherding fellow Christians in their faith, and foreshadowed his calling into public service. Mike served as the 44th governor of Arkansas for over a decade, with his time as their state's chief executive marked by his tireless pursuit of pragmatic solutions, a tireless work ethic, and an innate ability to forge relationships across political divides. He brought transformational change to Arkansas, leaving a legacy of lower taxes, job creation, improvement of state infrastructure, K through 16 education reform, and his enactment of a nationally recognized health initiative focused on disease prevention. Mike is not only qualified to serve as our ambassador to Israel, but he is uniquely suited for this role, given the way he has championed Israel throughout his entire life, including as a steadfast supporter of Israel's right to exist and defend itself. He has had an intimate familiarity with Israel's people and its leaders, having frequently visited for over 50 years, leading groups to the region since 1981. He also understands the importance of diplomacy and has profound respect and appreciation for it. And he has worked persistently throughout his life to advocate for strengthening and furthering the distinctly profound ties between our two countries. As the United States ambassador to Israel, he will bring thoughtful, principled approach to our relationship, as his extensive experience already shows. He believes, like many of us, that the United States and Israel share a sacred bond and that transcends politics, both in terms of shared values and mutual security. In an increasingly dangerous world, where Israel is under constant attack from Iran and its terrorist proxies, the United States needs a representative in Israel who not only understands the complex Middle East geopolitics, but can navigate them with conviction, strength, and tact. Governor Huckabee's background, character, and experience all uniquely qualify him to be that figure at this moment for this purpose. His deep understanding and love for Israel and its people will undoubtedly make him an exceptional ambassador. I know that he will represent the United States with honor, integrity, and an ironclad commitment to the enduring partnership between our two nations. I look forward to seeing all the great things he will do as the United States ambassador to Israel. I strongly support his nomination and urge my colleagues to do the same, as does my colleague, Senator Cotton from Arkansas. Thank you very much.
Chairman Risch and Ranking Member Shaheen, distinguished members of the committee, I want to say thank you very, very much for giving me the privilege of coming to...
Sorry about that. Committee will come back to order, and Mr. Huckabee, please proceed.
I will mark them down undecided, Senator. I want to thank you for the privilege of coming before you today as you conduct the constitutional obligation of advise and consent of those who have been nominated by the President to serve as an ambassador to our beloved nation. The founders recognized that Senate approval was not necessarily Senate agreement with the President, his policies, or even with those he selected to represent him. But the Senate affirms that those nominated be thoroughly examined to determine moral and legal fitness to serve. I'm aware that not everyone on this committee will agree with the President's policies or his personnel choices in his administration. I'm not here to articulate or even defend my own views or policies, but rather to present myself as one who will respect and represent the overwhelmingly elected President. President Trump's historic first-term success with the Abraham Accords, I believe, gives us real hope of what will happen over the next 4 years. And I'm grateful that President Trump has charged me with the extraordinary privilege to serve as ambassador to the State of Israel if confirmed. I'm blessed to have a wonderful and supportive family, especially my wife of almost 51 years, Janet, who is with me today. Now, I'm sure some of you are thinking, we look quite young to have been married 51 years, but we got married when we were 18. And in Arkansas, we were considered late bloomers. My 3 adult children and my 7 grandchildren are watching, and I'm grateful for them. I grew up in a small orange brick shotgun rent house in a little town called Hope, Arkansas. No male upstream from me, not one, in my entire family lineage had ever graduated from high school. The very notion that I would one day be governor of my state or be nominated to serve as an ambassador would have been laughable in my childhood. I stand here today grateful to God for his grace and goodness, and it is the only explanation for my being here. I would say the same for the nation that I've been nominated to deploy to. Israel is a tiny nation the size of New Jersey. And it's the only rational explanation for its existence in various forms for the past 3,500 years would be the grace and
Christianity to justify ethnic cleansing. Huckabee misuses Christianity to justify ethnic cleansing. Free Palestine. Senators ask him about the end game of Christian Zionism for Palestinians in Israel. Free Palestine. Free Palestine.
Well, the good news is they're not members of my family, which might be the case protesting me sometimes. I first visited Israel almost 52 years ago. It was the summer of 1973. It was just 3 months before the Yom Kippur War. I was 17 years old, right out of high school. It was a month before my 18th birthday. And despite my growing up in poverty, my soon-to-be college roommate came from an affluent family. We really were the prince and the pauper. My friend wanted to take a senior trip to the Middle East. Now, his father was willing to let him go, but only if I went along, and the father offered to pay my way to make it possible. In that summer, we went to Jordan, Lebanon, Syria, Greece, Turkey, Cyprus, and Israel. All of them were fascinating, but it was Israel that had an impact on me that 52 years later, I still find hard to explain. I started taking groups of people to visit there in 1981. I've led tens of thousands of people to visit the Bible lands. The number of trips that I've made there probably approximates 100. I've made deep and lasting friendships among Jewish and Arab populations.
Israel and U.S. have desecrated the Holy Land. Desecrating the Holy Land. Ethnic cleansing. Stop the ethnic cleansing. Stop the ethnic cleansing.
Thank you, Senator. I still believe it is the promised land. It's holy ground to Jews, Christians, and Muslims. Since 1948, when Israel was finally recognized as an independent Jewish state, it has always been under attack. The first nation to officially recognize Israel was the United States when our President, Harry S. Truman, did so within minutes of it being constituted as an independent state. Israel faced an immediate war in 1948 from the nations that surrounded it. It had another one in 1956, 1967, 1973, and yet others in 1982, 1990, and 2014. The terrorist group Hamas launched an attack October the 7th of 2023 against innocent civilians, including pregnant women, elderly people, and even tiny and helpless babies. The impact of that massacre continues to this very day. The ongoing war and the situation with the hostages, including American citizens, makes this assignment urgent. This body acted with bipartisanship and great dispatch as a result of the October 7th massacre of Israeli citizens, when our most recent ambassador, Jack Lew, was nominated by President Biden. And that sense of urgency has not dimmed. That war still continues. And for that reason, I respectfully ask your thoughtful consideration for confirmation to become our nation's ambassador to the State of Israel. Thank you.
To me, the Middle East is changing and has changed dramatically over the last decade or so. And I think people will look back in history and say the Abraham Accords were one of the pivotal points where that change took place. Do you agree with me that normalization between Israel and Saudi is a paramount goal for all of us to engage in to finish out what the Abraham Accords have started?
Mr. Chairman, without a doubt, that's got to be one of the most urgent things to happen. There's no reason that there's not a build upon the Abraham Accords. They were historic, significant in so many ways, and brought the reality that whether it's trade or tourism or the sharing of military intelligence for everyone's safety and security in that region are all benefited. Everyone there has pretty much the common adversary, enemy, if you will, and that's Iran, who seem hell-bent on wreaking havoc throughout the entire world, starting in the Middle East. So I believe the president is in an incredible position to build upon what he did in his first term, expanding the Abraham Accords to include not only the Saudis, but other Gulf state nations. And I would look forward very much, if confirmed, to working with all of you to see that to fruition.
Governor Huckabee, do you agree that the U.S. should hold all terrorist groups who played a role on October 7th accountable for the atrocities?
Senator, a wonderful question, because I feel like that this is one that everyone, Democrat, Republican, and the fact that you have bipartisan support to introduce that bill is very significant. I cannot imagine under any circumstances that any right-minded person would find it acceptable to support or to even acknowledge that there was justification in any way for the massacre of innocent civilians on October the 7th. If I'm confirmed, I will be absolutely clear to carry the president's policies. They have been clear that Hamas will have no future in Gaza. It can't. This was not simply a cold-blooded murder in which people came across the borders and shot innocent people. They massacred them. And they did it in the way that was most physically painful and in the way that was most personally humiliating. And worse, they videotaped themselves doing it because they were proud of it. And they published it with pride. And they announced repeatedly that they would do it again. Hamas is not a government, it's not a standing army, it is a terrorist organization, and they acted like it. And they must be treated as such. And if confirmed, I would hope that this unfortunate, horrific war that has resulted in many, many deaths, including Americans, the taking of hostages for a longer period of time than even the hostages in 1979 were taken during the Iranian takeover, that all of that could come to an end and there could be accountability for what was done to Jewish people on October the 7th of 2023.
So I take by your answer, I can have your commitment to work with me on this piece of legislation that will properly hold the People's Resistance Committees accountable and properly sanctioned and designated. Is that fair?
Senator, unflinchingly, I commit to you to do that very thing.
Great, thank you. Let's move on to the head of the snake, Iran. Right now, the Ayatollah is reeling. Hamas and Hezbollah have been decimated. Iran's been kicked out of Syria, at least for the time being, after the fall of Assad. Tehran's air defensive have been wiped out by the IDF. And thanks to President Trump reimposing maximum pressure, including sanctioning Communist China's teapot refineries, its economy is in free fall. However, it remains to be seen if, out of desperation, Iran will come to the table or sprint to build a nuclear weapon. President Trump has reportedly given Tehran 2 months to deal or risk severe consequences. Needless to say, Iran, being closer than ever to having a nuclear weapon, isn't just a threat to Israel, it's a threat to the United States and global security in general. It cannot be allowed to happen. Do you agree with President Trump that Iran cannot be allowed to have a nuclear weapon?
Senator, I appreciate the question because it gives me the opportunity to let you know that I absolutely believe that the president is taking the right course of action. He did it when his first term. The maximum pressure bankrupted the Iranians. It made it impossible for them to fund the Houthis, Hezbollah, Hamas. They didn't have the money. When his term ended and President Biden took office, unfortunately, they relaxed some of those pressures. And the result was Iran had money again. They didn't use it to help their people. They used it to murder people in Israel through the Houthis, through Hezbollah, and through Hamas. I'm grateful to serve a president who recognizes that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon and that it is better to bankrupt them than it is to bomb them.
And Governor Huckabee, you're exactly right. The Trump administration took Iran's foreign reserves down from $122.5 billion down to under $14 billion. That prevented them from funding groups like Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis. So you're exactly right. And this policy of sanctioning them and trying to bankrupt Iran is exactly the right course. So thank you very much. And with that, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Thank you, Senator Ricketts. Senator Booker.
Governor, it's good to see you here. My office lives with this fierce urgency. There's an American being held right now in Gaza named Idan Alexander. And knowing every day that he's being tortured, his suffering, and that of his family back in New Jersey is one of the central urgencies of my staff and my team. We know that we've seen a lot of the hostage releases happen during ceasefires. And during those times, the pathways to peace are open that would relieve the suffering of innocent Palestinians as well. We know that Hamas cannot remain in control, that they must release hostages and surrender so we can start the reconstruction and secure the safety and security of not just Palestinians, but the Israeli state as well. But again, the grief hanging over many of those who know the families involved makes central clarity to getting this done. I think that one of your most important missions, should you be confirmed, is getting the release of the hostages and aiding to the end of this nightmare that is fueling the suffering of Israelis and Palestinians. And so tactically, I'm curious of your thoughts, especially given the ceasefires that have enabled moments where hostages have been released. You know, during the first ceasefire, we saw releases of numerous hostages and commitments being made. I'm wondering if you can comment on what your thoughts are about how your role could help us get Idan home and an end to this nightmare.
Senator, I appreciate your question. And let me say emphatically that it would not be one of the most important things that I would consider on my duty list, if confirmed. It would be the most important thing. That American citizen from New Jersey that you care deeply about and you've worked so diligently with, and I'm deeply grateful for the efforts you've made with that family. That has to be the first item of business before anything else. Every hostage should have already been home. The only reason they're not is because of Hamas. Hamas, who has used them as bargaining chips, Hamas, who has used them to torture, Hamas, who, when they do release, often only because they feel compelled and absolutely obligated to give them one more day of survival, they do so in the most horrific way by humiliating the hostages.
And I'm going to interrupt because I have one more question I want to get done.
Okay.
And I interrupt you because I don't disagree with anything that you're saying. I was there on October 7th. The viciousness and brutality of that attack that triggered this whole thing lies at the feet of this terrorist organization. And so you and I are in complete agreement. What I'm asking, and I'm hoping I can get in writing because I really would like to get to my next question, is that we still have strategic and tactical decisions to make, and you will be one of the players at the table. Your affirmation and confirmation that this will be the most important thing, getting a United States citizen home, I hear that, and I'd like to be able to discuss that with you more. The second question I have is that the Jerusalem Post reported that the Trump administration's pivot to Russia is making our allies, including Israel, wary of sharing intelligence, fearing that doing so could expose their assets. There's precedent for this concern. On May 10th, 2017, while meeting with Russia's foreign minister and ambassador to Washington in the Oval Office, Trump shared intelligence about an Islamic State threat with specifics that came from a spy embedded in the terrorist group on behalf of Israel. Israel press reported that Trump's leak had placed that person's life at risk and cut off Israel from his intel. Now, fast forward, yesterday we learned that the highest ranking national security officials in the Trump administration, including the National Security Advisor, the head of the CIA, the Director of National Intelligence, the Secretary of State, and others, discussed sensitive and imminent military operations in a commercial unclassified messaging app and accidentally included a reporter in that chat. This seems to be a pattern and practice of the administration to be using unclassified platforms for these kind of communications. So I deeply value our relationship with Israel. I know you do. Does it concern you that our close ally is now hesitant to share intelligence because they fear the Trump administration and its top intelligence officials can't be trusted and are continuing to get evidence to that effect?
Senator, with appreciation for the question, I can only tell you that I've seen some news reports, but not detailed, and I have no knowledge of what has actually happened. If confirmed, I will work diligently with the President and all of my colleagues to ensure that there is integrity in all that is done. And I have confidence the President will charge me with that responsibility.
Thank you, Governor Huckabee. And I hope we can talk soon about Idan and his horrific reality in getting him home. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Booker. Let's see, Senator Daines.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Governor Huckabee, it's good to see you here this morning, as well as Janet. Good to see you here as well, and our other nominees. Thank you for being before this committee. Governor Huckabee, I want to jump into the issue with Israel. I think this is perhaps the single most important relationship we have on the earth is a relationship with the United States of America and Israel. If confirmed, you are going to be a terrific ambassador and a very important ambassador that looks at the priorities. I'm grateful for this president and the team he's assembled in terms of the moral clarity they're bringing back to Israel and the Middle East. The world will be a lot safer with this strong leadership coming from the Trump administration. Governor, I was in Israel a month before the October 7th attack. We did not know that was coming. I was there, went to the north, went down in those Hezbollah terror tunnels that don't get a lot of attention, descending some 80 feet down to the ground, extensive tunnel networks, spray painted inside the tunnel. It says, "On our way to Jerusalem," as Hezbollah was using that as a way to infiltrate Israel for an organized attack from the north. There's no question that terrorists and state sponsors like Iran continue to plot for the annihilation of Israel. My question is, how important do you think it is for Israel to normalize relations with U.S. partners like Saudi Arabia? I remember my meeting with Bibi. It was late August. There was great optimism about what's happening with Israel and Saudi Arabia of renormalized relationships. I think it'd be a breakthrough moment in the Middle East, of course, shattered with what happened on October 7th. And I hope and pray that we'll be back to working with the Saudis and seeing Israel and Saudi Arabia normalize their relationship. But how important do you think it is, that link between Israel and Saudi Arabia, and what should our role as the United States be in that regard?
Senator, I appreciate the question. I think the president's made it very clear that it is.
All right, suspend.
Leading us to hell on earth and not God's peace with justice. Free Gaza now. Free Gaza now.
Continue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think the president has made it very clear that it is one of his highest priorities to bring that level of cooperation.
Mike Huckabee uses Christianity to
All right,
Palestinian hope,
out.
to take Palestinians off their land.
Mr. Huckabee.
Mr. Chairman, thank you again. The third time is the charm, so let me see if I can do it.
All right.
The president has made it very clear that his goal is to see a real and lasting peace in the entire Middle East. And part of that would have to include the Saudi Arabia government, other governments of the Gulf states, and all those who really do wish to recognize that there is not a threat from Israel toward them. This is a remarkable change in the geopolitical structure, and it is an incredible opportunity. I've used the term that I think that it's possible that this president could achieve something in the Middle East that would have, and I use the term deliberately, biblical proportion. By that I mean that it would be astonishing and incredible to see former enemies who have fought wars from 1948, 56, 67, 73 and on, to become partners in peace, to share trade, to share economic development, to share tourism and free movement between the nations. It's not easy. It's not going to necessarily be quick. But, Senator, what you have mentioned is exactly what I believe this president is committed to. He's already achieved extraordinary success in his first term. And if confirmed, I look forward to being a part of seeing the next phase of what we know to be the Abraham Accords.
Governor, I can't help but reflect exactly what you said around the optimism we had towards the end of President Trump's first term with the Abraham Accords, the Iranians weakened by the strong sanctions, weakening the bad guys, strengthening the good guys. And then we went through the Biden years where that was absolutely turned on its head. And I'm grateful we returned back to that trajectory that we were on to bring peace back to the Middle East. Governor, I've got significant concerns about the status of foreign military sales sitting in purgatory at the State Department waiting to be fulfilled. Could this committee get your commitment to work towards the completion of the sales that the United States has made to Israel?
Senator, if confirmed, it would be a delight and privilege to work with the Secretary, the President, and the Department of Defense to ensure that we continue the commitment that we've already made. It's not a new commitment. It's a long-standing commitment to the state of Israel. And yes, I would commit to that.
Governor, thank you.
Governor Huckabee, I wanted to touch on a couple points. There are concerns to me, and I don't know if they're concerns of yours, but I thought I would just ask. One of the things that has bothered me a lot is the use of the 2,000-pound bombs in Gaza, because they are, by their very nature, indiscriminate. When they're called in to, even if they're called in to take on a identified Hamas target, the impact is often dozens of people and tens of dozens injured from a single bomb, because the blast crater is so large and the blast radius is huge. Have you had any concerns at all about the use of the 2,000-pound bombs in the areas of Gaza?
Senator, I'm not confirmed, therefore I don't have access to the level of information that you would certainly possess. I would hope that one of the commitments that we could keep to the state of Israel is to ensure that the weapon we provide includes the smart weaponry that can be
Okay, that
more
is a
accurate.
different question. I'd really appreciate if you just address, you're basically saying based on the publicly available information, you currently have no concerns?
I would want to discuss with the president because an
Okay,
ambassador
thank
doesn't
you.
get to
Well,
have
we'll move
policies.
on. I'm trying to give you an opportunity to actually
Sure.
answer questions.
And I'm trying to answer, Senator, but all I can do is
Okay,
tell
another
you that
concern that I've had is the use of humanitarian supplies as leverage, in which they've been restricted time and again. Under international law, this is generally considered an illegitimate strategy of war. Have you had any concerns at all about Israel restricting the supplies of food to Gaza?
they provided 700 trucks a day to go.
Have you had concerns or not? The answer is no, just tell me no.
Well, I'm doing my best to tell you, Senator, that there have been massive supplies.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to move on because that's just
Okay.
not true under the facts. There's been extended periods where very few trucks at all have gotten in, and certainly we did have relief during the ceasefire, but we're now in a new phase of extremely restricted supplies. There's been many, many international organizations that have reported on this, so I know you're not unaware of it. The president has a plan in which he's talked about having Palestinians all forced out of Gaza and into some other set of countries. Do you support that strategy?
Senator, the president has never said that he would force displacement. That has not been his statements nor his policy, but rather to make sure that there is a safe and secure place for people to live during the process of cleaning out what is a disastrous mess.
Which you said would
thanks
be
to Hamas.
outside of Gaza. That safe and secure place you said would be outside of Gaza. So are you comfortable with Palestinians, whether they're invited, incentivized, whatever? Do you think that they should be moved out of Gaza?
They shouldn't be forced displacement unless for
thank
their
you.
own security. But there are 30,000
Except for their own
unexploded
security.
ordinances
So for their own security,
still
they
there.
could be forced out of Gaza then?
I'm sorry, sir.
You said if it's for their own security, they could be forced out of Gaza?
I didn't say they could be forced, and the president has never said that. He has never spoken about forced displacement, but providing for
Okay,
them to
thank
find
you.
safe haven away from the unexploded
So
ordinances and destruction.
another issue that has arisen is certainly the idea of greater Israel, Judea and Samaria. Was that a gavel? I don't think I'm over
No.
time yet. All right, thank you.
It was accidental
I'm
discharge.
trying to get as many questions I can in these very few minutes. The greater Israel, Judea, and Samaria includes the West Bank and Gaza. Do you support the idea, as many as Israelis do, of having a greater Israel?
Senator, if confirmed, it'll be my duty to carry out the president's policies, not mine. One of the things that I will recognize, an ambassador doesn't create the policy, he carries the policy of his country and his president.
But you have expressed support before for the West Bank being Israeli territory. So have you previously supported the idea of annexation of the West Bank?
I have previously supported it, yes, sir, Judea and
you.
Samaria, but it would not be my prerogative to make that the policy of the president.
Yeah. Do you support the annexation of Gaza as well?
Senator, once again, it would be the prerogative of the president.
But you've had previous positions. Have you previously supported the greater Judea-Samaria vision?
I don't recall having
Final
about
question. I have
Gaza.
15 seconds.
Okay.
Leahy law allows for us to sanction individual units in a foreign military that have been violating human rights. There's been a series of cases involving certain individual IDF units. Should units of IDF that carry out attacks on West Bank villages, Palestinian villages, should they be subject to full examination under the Leahy law, or should Israel be exempted?
I think the president will instruct Secretary Rubio and, frankly, Mr. Rubenstein to my left to make sure that the law is followed. And I think
It's
there
never
are
been
often
followed yet.
accusations.
It's
Senator,
never
let me
been
just-
applied to Israel, but you think
Let me
it should
just say
be.
that I think that there are often accusations that Israel is doing things that, as it turns out, they're not. They don't have many friends.
But if they were doing it, you would support the Leahy law being applied as an American standard for supporting human rights?
Senator, I would think that the United States always wants to follow what's right, what's legal, and it would be the president's decision and the secretary's decision to negotiate with the Israelis on what
Thank you,
exactly
Governor.
that means.
My time's up.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Curtis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member. It's a delight to be with all of you. Mr. Huckabee, I can't imagine, on one hand, a more rewarding and on the other hand, a more challenging assignment than what you've been given. And I'm actually very jealous. Utah has a very special relationship with Israel. I like to tease my friends with ties to Israel that until I was 18, I thought I grew up in Zion in Utah. We have a Zion Park, we have a Jordan River, there's just lots of ties. One of those ties is Brigham Young University, sponsored by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, that has a campus there. And when I was 18 years old in 1979, I spent 6 months on that campus. At the time, the campus wasn't built. We lived in a kibbutz. And I had the opportunity to be there the day Jimmy Carter signed the peace accord with Israel and Egypt. And I bring that up. I actually have a picture of the Jerusalem Post hanging in my office from that day to show that we can have peace. It's hard. Some gave their lives for that accord. And likewise, President Trump's attempt on the Abraham Accords is equally noteworthy and is important. And so it's clear that Utah, that myself, Brigham Young University, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has this tie. And I don't need to go into the past, but this might be a good opportunity to send a message to Utah about how you feel about our dominant faith. I just didn't know if you would have me carry anything back to Utahns.
Nothing, Senator, let me be very clear, and I appreciate the question and the opportunity. The respect that I have for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is extraordinary because I respect very much the commitment to family, to moral righteousness, to a sense of right and wrong. It's part of what has drawn me to an understanding that Israel, in many ways, is a reflection of our own heritage and history. It is the Judeo-Christian law that there is a right and that there is a wrong, upon which all of Western civilization is built, but certainly our system of government. There is no country across the globe that more mirrors our own struggle and our own level of democracy than does the State of Israel. And it's one of the reasons that it is a natural ally. The spiritual connections between your church, mine, many churches in America, Jewish congregations to the State of Israel is because we ultimately are people of the book. We believe the Bible. And therefore, that connection is not geopolitical. It is also spiritual. And to ignore that, to deny that, would be to make it very difficult for us to ever understand how to go forward in a relationship with them.
Thank you. I will certainly carry that message back to Utah. And I agree. I can't imagine what I'm doing now without that spiritual opportunity that I had to understand both Arab, Jew, and Christian in that period of my life. The Brigham Young University has a center over there. It's on the Mount of Olives. I would like to invite you to meet there on the campus as you get your feet underneath you. And if you're okay, I'll help broker that agreement. I think they'd love to have you there and see what they're doing there in Jerusalem.
Senator, just for the record, I have been there.
Oh, excellent. Good.
And it's a beautiful, beautiful facility on the Mount of Olives and has one of the most spectacular views of the old city in all of Israel.
Yes, and we'll make sure there's an organ recital on your next visit back there as you do that.
As long as I'm not required to play it.
Yeah.
Governor Huckabee, it's wonderful to see you here. You're somebody I've long admired. I appreciate our friendship. I must say you're one of the best communicators that I've ever had a chance to work with, and what a beautiful skill set to bring to such a critical role as being our next ambassador to Israel. In President Trump's first term, he stood by Israel in a way that was unprecedented, and he did it in a way that weakened our mutual enemies, and he did it all while avoiding a costly war. If you think about what happened, he moved our embassy to Jerusalem. He acknowledged Israel's sovereignty over the Golan Heights, and he acknowledged and negotiated the historic Abraham Accords. He did all of this despite the pearl clutching in Washington. without a single war. We also withdrew from the disastrous JCPOA, and we implemented maximum pressure on Iran at a time that was absolutely critical. I participated in that, getting the Japanese government to stop buying Iranian crude oil. It happened around the world. Guess what happened? Iran was broke. Then something changed. The administration changed. The Biden administration came in, waived the sanctions, stopped enforcing the sanctions on Iran. Iran became rich again. They began to talk in ways that created distance and daylight between America and its ally Israel. And I think that had a great deal to do with emboldening Hamas, emboldening Iran, and leading up to the October 7th, 2023 attacks. I'd just like to hear your viewpoint, Governor Huckabee, in the event that you're confirmed, of how important it is to you that the United States stand arm in arm with Israel and not show any daylight between ourselves and our ally.
Senator, thank you. And a wonderful question and an opportunity for me to remind everyone that it was during President Trump's first term that there really was peace. There was peace in the Middle East. He did extraordinary things to show our relationship to Israel in recognizing Jerusalem as the eternal indigenous capital of the Jewish people. When he moved the embassy, basically the entire world told him not to do it, that the world would blow up if he did it. He did it. I happened to be with him one-on-one about 2 weeks after he made that decision and announced it. I'll never forget, Senator, what he said to me, because I asked him, why did you do it? Everyone told you not to. The world leaders, people in government positions, they all said, don't do it. You did it. Why? I'll never forget. He looked at me very simply and said, because I said I would, and it was the right thing to do. And Senator, that's why I am honored and privileged to be able to be named by this president to serve in this capacity, because I like his sense of clarity when it comes to the moral issue of standing with an ally. And right now, Israel needs an ally. And frankly, let me add, the Jewish people need to know they have friends. There's a long line of enemies that the Jewish people experience across this globe, and sadly, on some of our own university campuses. It's going to be a privilege to be able to be one of those people, not Jewish, Christian in fact, but to say to our Jewish friends, you will never go through what you've gone through alone. We will stand not behind you, we will stand with you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Senator Van Hollen.
Thank you, and welcome everybody. I want to associate myself with the remarks of Senator Shaheen, her opening remarks. Governor Huckabee, it was good to get together with you yesterday. I only get 5 minutes in this forum, so if you could keep your answers short. I'm just going to ask your views on certain principles, and it is absolutely true that the Jewish state needs a friend. I think you also recognize that there are many in the Jewish community here in the United States who disagree with the views that you've expressed with respect to certain issues in Israel. And I do want to ask you about some of those, because you are seen as a big hero of the Jewish settler movement on the West Bank. You supported the idea of Israeli annexation of the West Bank, as you've confirmed here today. So I want to know where you draw the line. I recognize that you will be the president's emissary, but you've made a lot of comments on this, so I'm interested in your thoughts. Do you agree with me that it would be wrong for a Jewish settler to push a Palestinian family off land on the West Bank that was owned by that Palestinian family? Do you agree with that?
Senator, thanks for the question. I think there are a lot of things attributed to me that aren't necessarily 100% accurate. I'm sure you would, if you've experienced that a time or two in your career.
That's why I'm trying to clarify. I'm asking some very simple questions.
A very simple
hope
question.
to get very direct
I'll give you a very
answers.
simple answer. I believe that there has to be always the law being followed, and there has to be clarity. I also believe that it won't be my policy that will be implemented in the Middle East. It will be that of the president.
So this was a very simple question, Governor.
Yes, sir.
So we have a Palestinian family on the West Bank today. They own the land they're on. My question to you is, do you agree that it would be wrong for a Jewish settler to push that family off their land? Yes or no?
If we're talking about stealing the land, taking it away from them?
Their land, yes.
That's a problem. If you're talking about purchasing the land, that's a legitimate transaction that
Okay, so when you said in 2017, and I quote, Israel has title deed to Judea and Samaria, unquote, you did not mean it gave Israel the right to kick Palestinians off their lands in the West Bank. Am I right about that?
Senator, I've never indicated that that was a part of that. I simply referenced the biblical mandate that goes all the way back to the time of Abraham, 3,500 years ago, and that's what I was referencing.
Right. No, I understand you have that view, but I'm trying to understand the consequences of that view. So in your view, if Israel were to annex the West Bank, what rights would Palestinians have? Because when I asked you that question yesterday, you focused on the right to work, economic opportunity. So my question today is, would those Palestinian individuals in an annexed West Bank have the same legal and democratic rights as Israeli Jews living in the West Bank?
Annexation does not mean displacement of people.
No, I'm not asking about displacement right now. I'm
Senator,
asking if they remained there, would they have equal rights to Israeli Jews living on the West Bank?
There would be security. There would be opportunity.
That's not what I'm asking.
Okay.
Governor. You know that.
No, I'm
So I'm asking whether they would have equal legal rights, whether they would have the same legal rights as a Israeli Jew who settled on the West Bank living side by side. Would they have the same legal and political rights?
Senator, if you mean would they be able to live freely, they already do.
How about voting? You're suggesting that the West Bank become part of Israel. Are you suggesting that Palestinians living in the West Bank should have the right then to vote in elections in Israel?
Senator, let me correct and say I'm not suggesting.
Let me
because I
move on.
Carry out the policies of the president.
I do want to ask you about the situation in Gaza because I think you would agree that it would be wrong to hold any innocent Palestinian civilian accountable for the evils of Hamas, right? I mean, that's just a simple principle. You don't believe in collective punishment, do you?
Senator, I don't believe in collective punishment. Right. If the Palestinians in Gaza have participated in the holding of hostages and in the torture,
right.
then so they've got culpability.
But there are 2 million people right there. And Senator Merkley asked you earlier about withholding food, because for 23 days, there has been a ban on humanitarian assistance into Gaza. Finance Minister Smotrich suggested, and I'm quoting, it might be justified and moral to starve 2 million Palestinians in Gaza as part of a strategy to free the hostages. Simple question. Do you disagree with Finance Minister Smotrich?
Senator, as you know, an ambassador doesn't get to argue with the people of the country he goes to represent the United States in.
Right.
But my job is to represent the president and his policies. Right. And he has not given those to me because I've not been confirmed.
I understand. You are aware, are you not, Governor, that when he was asked whether the Palestinians who would leave Gaza under the president's plan could return, he said no. That doesn't sound like a voluntary program, does it?
What I've heard the president say is he does not push for forced displacement. I've also heard him say he wants a better life for the Palestinian people. He wants them to have security. He doesn't want their children to be put in front of the munitions of Hamas as they have.
Nobody does, Governor, but that's not the question.
But that's
I see
what
the time's up.
President has said.
We did have I thought, an important conversation yesterday about the situation of some of the churches in Jerusalem and Israel who are feeling a lot of financial pressure because of actions being taken by municipalities in Israel, as well as a concern they have about a bill in the Knesset. You remember that conversation?
Yes, sir.
And
Senator,
you agree that we should work together
on,
on that issue, right?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
To our, I'm up, so to our nominees, congratulations. We're glad to have you here. And I'll start with you, Governor Huckabee. It was good to have a chance to meet with you. And a couple weeks ago, Dina and I, as you did, went to Israel. Soon after October 7th, we saw firsthand the horrific brutality that occurred there. And I think we also share with you an optimism that in this second term of President Trump's presidency that we'll be able to pick up some of the wonderful progress of the Abraham Accords and move forward. But recently, we've seen the decisive action of President Trump directed against the Houthis, which terrorize Israel, are terrorizing the shipping lanes, directly attacking U.S.-flagged vessels. And I wondered if you could speak for a minute about how you would imagine working hand in hand with the administration, but also Israel, to confront that threat.
Senator, thank you, and it's great to see you. What the president has made clear is that the United States is not going to be played for a chump. We're not going to allow the Houthis to bombard our naval capacity, stop shipping lanes. The president has made it very clear that America has every right to defend our interest and to stand by our allies. And it's one of the reasons that I feel so extraordinarily grateful to this president for the opportunity to serve in the capacity to which he has nominated me. And if confirmed, I want to be able to take the clarity of his voice and moral understanding of what should happen in the Middle East in dealing with terrorism and being able to be part of something historic, to stop that which has murdered and destroyed the lives and livelihoods, not only of soldiers, but of civilians.
Thank you, Governor. Also, to follow up on the progress of the Abraham Accords, as you know, that peace treaty was really the most significant in 40 years. It laid the predicate for an expansion of peace throughout the region, which was sadly disrupted by the vicious attack by Hamas. How do you imagine working with other countries in the region, and with Israel, of course, to expand the Abraham Accords over the next 4 years of President Trump's presidency?
Senator, that's a great question, because everyone in all the region has everything to gain and nothing to lose by working cooperatively. If one looks at the agricultural advances that Israel has made and their willingness to share them with all of these other nations that are basically deserts, in my 52 years of traveling to Israel, I've literally seen the verses of the Bible come to life. The dry bones have come to live again, and the desert has bloomed because of Israeli advancement in hydrology, being able to use water in a way that literally turned deserts into vast array of vegetation, which now exports fruits and vegetables everywhere. Look at the technology that could be shared, which creates a greater level of security. And of course, whether it's trade, tourism, no one loses then, everyone wins. Nobody is looking at taking somebody else's territory and moving into their sovereignty. At that point, it becomes an opportunity to bring a real sense of peace for all of the people of the Middle East, whether they are of Jewish or Arab descent. And that would be something that I believe this president could uniquely bring about.
Governor Huckabee, I know from our conversation earlier, like me, you care deeply about the bonds between the United States and Israel. I have no doubt that if confirmed, you will work tirelessly to strengthen the U.S.-Israel relationship, meet Israel's defense needs, and free all of the remaining hostages held by Hamas. What I do have concerns about, however, is how you will work to maintain a bipartisan U.S. support for Israel and whether you will encourage steps that could one day lead to a durable, lasting peace in the region that finally provides Israel with long-term security. So, Governor Huckabee, to have any chance of achieving what I just laid out, Israel cannot turn into a partisan football here on Capitol Hill. We've already had this discussion. Do you agree with that? And if so, will you commit to maintaining an ongoing, equal communication with both Republican and Democratic offices, if confirmed?
Senator, thank you. And it's a very important and valid question to which I can say emphatically that I affirm a commitment that if I am confirmed, I would have a responsibility. It's not just that I would do it because it would be a nice thing to do. It's a responsibility of an ambassador to serve the entire country, certainly to serve the president who appoints me, the policies of this president and the secretary, but it's also a duty to communicate. And it's a conversation that I also had with Ranking Member Shaheen yesterday and committed to her that there would be no difference in the manner in which I would receive a call from someone who's a Democrat or Republican.
Thank you.
Quite frankly, if I could add one thing.
Yes, and I have another question.
Just real quickly, that I can remember the day when the Democrats were the most reliable supporters of Israel in this
And
city.
they still are, sir.
Well,
so I'm
I
going to
hope they
move to my
always will be.
next question. Based on your previous statements, I do think it's fair to say you're opposed to a two-state solution. So while we both agree that two states living side by side in peace, it's not possible today, particularly with Hamas still in power in Gaza, but I firmly believe this should remain the ultimate goal and inform the U.S. approach to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, especially after the war in Gaza ends. It's in both Israel's best security interest to reach such an agreement, and the only way to maintain Israel as a Jewish democratic state for the long term. We're in it for the long run. And so given this, do you believe that the U.S. should continue advocating for a future two-state solution? And if not, what is your alternative?
Senator, it's a good question. And quite frankly, I think the question is not, is there a need for people who are Palestinian to be able to live and have a future? The question is where and when. Where will that be? Will it be on top of the Israeli Jewish state? Or will it be somewhere that is decided upon that would be completely different, only for those who wish to locate there? And here's my point. Senator, Israel is a tiny little strip of land. You know that. We all do. It's a size of New Jersey. But Muslim countries control 644 times the amount of land that Israel has. They've been surrounded by those who have sought to destroy it, annihilate it. Those who chant from the river to the sea are not bringing about peace. The Palestinians were given the opportunity in the year 2000 when Ehud Barak from Israel put everything on the table, virtually said, 100%, here it is, you get it all. And the Palestinian Liberation Organization walked away from it. The other thing that has to happen is a cultural shift. There can be no peace and two-state solution if there continues to be education from the time a child is 5 and 6 years old living under the Palestinian Authority that says it's okay, in fact, it's desirable to murder Jews and to reward them for it.
I want to build on what we talked about. You spoke earlier about the Abraham Accords, how important that is, because a cultural shift, Abraham Accords and other kinds of diplomacy can help lead to that cultural shift. And you and I both agree that Iran presents a major threat to Israel's existence, and the growth of the Abraham Accords is one of the best ways to counter Iranian aggression and start that cultural shift, if you will. So given that a two-state solution central to the Saudis and other Arab partners, and in this broader conversation, I'm running out of time, so maybe you'll let him answer, Chairwoman. How do you propose we expand the Abraham Accords absent of support for a two-state solution?
Through the long process of seeing the culture change. There has to be an admission that Israel has a right to exist. There has to be some recognition that there will be a change in the policy of educating children to hate Jews. That does not lead toward a peaceful coexistence anywhere at any time. And we're seeing the results of that anti-Semitism here in our homeland, which is very distressing to me, I'm sure to you too, Senator, to see people who are raised up with an irrational hatred toward Jewish people. And that cannot lead to any level of peaceful coexistence, whether it's here, there, or anywhere else on the planet.
Madam Chair.
Senator Scott.
Okay. Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Rubenstein, we talked about this a little bit. Can you give me, here's the issue that bothered me a few years ago. I could not get the, through the Secretary of State, them to make sure we got rid of immunity for suing PAHO. As you probably know, PAHO is, I guess, some sort of sister organization to WHO. And what was happening is Cuban doctors and Cuban nurses are being sent around the world and then they were paid a certain amount of money to the Cuban government, and then the doctors and nurses got a pittance of that. To me, I think that's human trafficking. I never could get, under the first Trump administration, I never could get the waiver of immunity. And so I don't know if you've had any time to think about that and what you think about that and whether that's right. But I think human trafficking is wrong, and I think anything to help the Cuban regime is not good for the United States. Thank you, Senator. I don't think so.
That's twice. Thank you, Senator, and thank you for taking the time to speak with me. I very much appreciate and enjoyed our conversation. Yes, I agree with you. Human trafficking is wrong. I further understand your frustration. As I explained, over the course of my career, I have done perhaps more than kind of the normal amount of victim of terrorism representation. So I feel these issues, very strongly. I do not know the circumstances of what occurred and what was going on when you requested the information. I have not been read into the facts. I would want to take a look and understand what the institutional position was and what was going on. But I pledged to you then, and I pledge to you now, that I will always communicate with you or any other member of the committee and provide as much information as lawfully I'm able to provide.
At least for me, the most frustrating thing is just a black hole. A lot of in my time up here is you ask people information from the executive branch, and it just goes. We're working, it's like so. But all right, Governor Huckabee, can you tell us why is the defense of Israel, the support of Israel, important to America?
Senator, a great question. The truth is, it's been very clear, as expressed by the Iranian government, that Israel is the appetizer and we're the entree. They don't want to stop at Israel. They certainly want to annihilate them. They've said it over and over, and there's an old saying that when people are saying again and again they're going to kill you, you might want to take them seriously. But they've also gone beyond saying they want to annihilate Israel and wipe it off the face of the earth. They've said that their ultimate goal is to first take care of the little Satan, they identify as Israel, and then come after the great Satan. Senator, that's us. And whatever is happening to Israel, it is the canary in the coal mine. These governments, Iran being the most notable, who want to develop a nuclear weapon and who have the audacity to wish to use it to destroy a sovereign Jewish state so that they ultimately could destroy Western civilization. That's why it matters, Senator, and I appreciate your question because I hope people will understand this is not just about Israel. It is about us. And if we don't stand with them, they stand alone. And if they fall alone, we fall next.
Thank you, Governor Huckabee. Congratulations on your nomination. You're going to do a fantastic job, and I'm very happy to see you named for this position. As you know, you're stepping into a role that's not just incredibly important, but it's also incredibly influential. In addition to implementing President Trump's policy, you will oversee what information gets sent back to Washington, D.C. Those assessments get sent to administration officials and members of this committee. Indeed, this committee requires the State Department to submit a range of regular reports and relies on those reports to advance our oversight of the department and American foreign policy. And as you know, you're going to have your work cut out for you. During the Biden administration, such reports were often withheld, and when they were sent, they were systematically politicized to promote the administration's misguided Middle East policy, which boosted America's enemies and punished our allies. Officials in the Trump administration are just beginning to clear the shelves of what was left over. I am holding right now a report produced mostly during the Biden administration. It covers Palestinian Authority incitement of violence against Israelis for the period of February 2023 to May 2024, which includes the aftermath of the October 7th terrorist attacks. It was deliberately withheld from Congress and only sent to this committee this month. It is unclassified, but it hasn't been made public. It is a deeply disturbing example of the challenge you will face and the thinking inside parts of the State Department. This report says that Palestinian President Abbas, quote, President Abbas maintained a public position against incitement of violence and terrorism and reiterated his commitment to nonviolence. He condemned the killing of Israeli civilians by Hamas on October 7th because it had given Israel the pretext to attack Gaza. Let's put aside the disgusting claim that Israel's campaign against Hamas was done on a pretext. The claim that Abbas has not incited violence is staggering. In reality, in relation to October 7th, he and other Palestinian officials blamed Israel and used rhetoric about Palestinian self-defense. A month after the attack, a top Abbas advisor even bragged that the Palestinian Authority had not uttered a single word condemning Hamas. I'd like to ask you, Governor, talk a little bit about your own assessment regarding Palestinian incitement and what that should mean to American foreign policy towards Israel in the region.
Senator, I think the question is very relevant to what's happening right now. The great tragedy is that it's hard to have a peaceful solution that involves a future for the Palestinians when they quench any hope of real democracy for their people. Abbas is now in the 20th year of his 4-year term. As we think about that, one has to ask, how many years does a person get for a 4-year term without an election, without some transfer of power, without empowering the people to speak for themselves? That's part of the real challenge that is faced in the Middle East. With the ongoing doctrine where compensation is given to those who murder Jews, parks and streets are named for those who do it, pensions are given to the families of those who are killed in the line of killing Jews. Senator, that's a difficult pathway to peace. I would further just mention that if, in fact, there is going to be a peaceful direction, we have to accept that something isn't working. And the two-state solution, the notion that everyone's going to live together, toast marshmallows around the campfire, singing Kumbaya, and it's going to happen in our lifetime, is not going to happen if one of the sides doesn't believe the other one has a right to exist and continues to say from the river to the sea. And so that's why it becomes a challenge. I have every confidence that Secretary Rubio, and especially every confidence that President Trump, wants to see a genuine, long-lasting peace for everyone in the Middle East. And it will be a privilege to serve the president to try to work toward that.
I have another couple of questions before we close. The first is for you, Governor Huckabee. And again, we discussed this a little bit yesterday when we met, but as you know, what happens in Israel doesn't just affect Israel, it also affects the region. And in neighboring Syria, as we discussed, I think there is an historic opportunity to build a stable, hopefully democratic, but certainly prosperous future that is very different from the Assad regime of the last 50-plus years. But I'm very concerned that there are reports that there are ongoing communications between Russia and Syria, also between Iran and Syria, but particularly Russia, that if we don't seize this moment, Russia may again embed itself with the new authorities in a way that is not going to be in the long-term best interest either of Syria or the United States or the region, I would assert. So can you talk a little bit about how you think we can work with Israel to achieve a Syria that's no longer subject to Russian influence?
Senator, an excellent question and quite timely. As I said to you yesterday, there are people who want a stable Syria more than anyone in the world. The Israelis, particularly the mothers and the fathers of those 18-year-old men and women who have just been drafted into the military and who, God forbid, are going to have to go to yet another theater of war on their border. It is in the world's best interest to see their stability there. But it is in Israel's immediate interest to see that happen. And I'm confident that the president will do everything in his power to see that to fruition.
And can I assume from that you would encourage that direction and encourage the president to think about the opportunities that we have right now in Syria?
Senator, it's my view that the president would encourage me to think in that direction. Generally, it's hard to get in front of him. It's usually necessary to get behind what he's already thought. And I'm convinced and confident, again, I don't have a conversation till I'm confirmed. I won't be able to have that kind of conversation. But it would not surprise me at all if that's already on his agenda to make happen.
Well, I would certainly agree with you with respect to actions in Israel. However, the president does seem to be falling prey to the manipulation of Vladimir Putin and reciting the Russian talking points. And if Russia's interested in getting back into Syria, I would hope that we would not pay attention to what Russia wants and would pay attention to what the United States wants. Before I end my remarks, let me ask unanimous consent that materials relating to Mr. Rubenstein's and Mr. Huckabee's nomination be submitted for the record. I will also note for the information of members that the record will remain open until close of business tomorrow, March 26th, for members to submit questions for the record. I would hope that any questions that you all receive, you would try and get back to us as soon as possible. With that, and thanks to the committee, this hearing is adjourned.